Hello and welcome to this episode of reVised TV. I'm your host, Christie Browning, and I am so excited to introduce this specific episode because we took the time to interview author and speaker Heather Burgette on her newest project. She just recently released a book that is entitled Unlock Your Why, Understanding Principles and Mindsets for Better Money Management and Overall Getting Debt-Free. Her story on becoming debt-free, the way she did it, the why of why she did it is so inspiring, and I hope that it will really touch you. In addition to that, Heather also runs a Facebook community called Becoming Debt Free, where she shares more of her ideas and inspiration on how you can become debt free as well. This is a topic that really resonates with me personally, as my husband and I have been on that same journey, and we know the benefits of getting control of our spending, getting a wrap on our savings, and knowing how to live life without debt. So it's my very special honor to introduce you to my friend Heather. I hope you get a lot out of this special episode. Well, I am so excited and super honored to get to spend some time with Heather today. You guys are in for a real treat because this woman is passionate about a topic that I'm equally passionate about, and it's so cool to hear it from someone else's perspective. But before we dive into all the goodies, I want to let you guys hear a little bit from Heather, who she is and what makes her tick. So Heather, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi guys. So my name is Heather, and I am super passionate about helping people with their finances, um, around creating community and conversation with personal finances. The beginning of my story, I'm a native Hoosier, and I was born and raised in Northern Indiana, oldest of 8 siblings. Um, so uh, I've always been around community. It's like a normal thing. And I think that has really helped me, is the root of like understanding that when you're going through celebrating things and with struggles, it's important to have people around you. You need people around you, but we tend to withdraw, especially when we're struggling with something that either we want to hide or we feel shameful about whatever decisions we've made. Even if they were things that we just made out of lack of knowledge. And so I have an undergraduate degree in professional writing and an MBA, and I've been teaching college classes in the area since 2008. And have 4 kids. My oldest just celebrated his 8th birthday yesterday, and my youngest is 1. So we are in the throes of a busy life, and both my husband and I are entrepreneurs. So every day is an adventure, and it's just, I have loved using social media over these last few years as it has grown, and it's really become a platform for whatever people want to make it. And for me, that has been reaching out to people, encouraging people, connecting with other people that their story is super inspiring, and I'm learning from them and sharing what I know and what I've learned over the years. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me. We'll get into more as we go.
So I'm assuming you're not carrying on the 8 children tradition.
No. I think we have a boy, girl, and I think we feel really happy with that. And our youngest is just a total sweetheart. She really feels like the baby of the family.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, tell us a little bit about this passion, this drive that you have to bring community and conversation around personal finances and the whole topic of money. That's usually not a topic that brings community together. Everyone runs and hides when it's time to discuss dollars. So how did you stumble upon that, and how has that influenced your journey so far?
Yeah, so my husband and I, we were in our mid-20s, I think, when we met. And as we were dating for about 18 months. And pretty like early on, even before we were engaged, we were talking about how we wanted to raise our kids and how we wanted to just live our lives, like kind of figuring out if we lined up with our values and stuff. And really realized that once we got engaged and had a short engagement, realized like we have a lot of debt, and I had a lot of it. I had most of it. And if you want to be able to stay home with the kids, which was my heart, and I had a career and stuff, but I knew I wanted to do that, then if we didn't pay off our debt quickly, it would be like we would always be just barely making it. And even with a good income. And so we hit the ground running, really. Like we got married and hit the ground running, wanted to pay off our debt as fast as we could. And we told everybody about it. Like it just felt like this is what we're going to do. We need to get this done. And we had over $75,000. That was student loans. That was a payday loan, credit cards, and I think our cars were paid off. So it was, when I talk about paying off debt, unsecured debt, and then my husband had bought a house. So there was a mortgage that he had been paying off. So we hit the ground running. Our goal, we thought we could do it in maybe 2 to 3 years. And both of us just worked as much as we could. And that was how we started our marriage, was just always talking about our finances. And it was really hard because we had different perspectives. Obviously, we're different people. So we knew we both had this goal, shared the same goal, but how to get there and how to work through those conversations. And at the same time, I was dealing with so much shame, which, I just was finally starting to really realize like what I was having to put on hold still makes me feel clumped because of these choices that I had made in my 20s. And it was really, that was hard. And so while my husband there are different approaches to money and marriage, but ours was, we're sharing it. And so he never, ever was like, you're dead, or, that was never part of the conversation. But I still struggled with just like, oh, we have to be so tight with our money. And I'd moved into this house and I wanted to make it our home. And we cut out everything as much as possible. And we're super thrifty. And so working through that was tough. And about a couple years into the journey, I realized we'd been talking with family and stuff. And I thought, this would be really fun to like expand this and like share it with other people, because I know that there are other people out there, and they were just people I knew in my life. And so I started a Facebook group in 2014, Becoming Debt Free. And we just started, the conversation was anything from, people were all along the spectrum. Some people were like, where do I even begin? And then other people were like, I'm almost done paying off my debt. And so it just became tips and tricks and community and conversation and asking questions and getting support, and from like, not just me, but like the whole community, which was really wonderful to see come together. And it's just kind of evolved over the years. My husband and I have taught personal finance classes at our church. And, we just kept inspired because we ended up having a couple kids along the way. And so that just delayed things. Our income went down because I ended up staying home, and I kept teaching as much as I could at nights and stuff. And so I love reading about the stories of people who paid off $100,000 in 2 years. I'm like, you're amazing. They probably were dealing with a lot more income than we had, but we did not give up. And I think sticking with something, with whatever it is it is so hard, because you start to think like, is this really even worth it? Like, let's just back off a little bit. Let's just take our time. Like, maybe that was too lofty of a goal. Like, you just start to like talk yourself out of your aspiration. And so we really had to be so intentional to encourage one another, to keep inspired. We listened to lots of Dave Ramsey debt-free screams. I still cry when I listen to those stories or watch them because they're just so incredible. And I think it was August of, now I'm forgetting the date, 2015, I think, we made our last student loan payment. And let me tell you, it's for anybody who's on your debt-free journey, it is 100% worth it.
Mm-hmm.
There's never like, oh, I mean, it was kind of great, but like it didn't feel as good as we thought it would. No, it feels even better, because then the next month when we went back to our budget, we were able to look all of this money that we had been sending off to creditors, and it was ours. Like it was all ours. And that was like such an incredible feeling. And then we were kind of lost for a few months of like, oh gosh, like, okay, now where do we, what's the next thing? What are our next goals and stuff? Because we had been working towards that goal for so long. So it has just evolved as far as my heart I know what it's like to feel so lost, to feel ashamed, to feel like there's no way out of the pit, because that does feel, and then you don't want to talk to anybody about it because you feel like I'm the one who made these dumb choices, and I don't want to let anybody know that I took out a $10,000 payday loan just so I could, buy some more stuff, support my habits. And so I want I want to come alongside of people, to be a confidant and a cheerleader, and just a little bit further steps ahead of them to say, I see where you are and I know you can get where you want to go. And for many other people to plant this seed of like, hey, guess what? Like, I know it feels normal, like this paycheck to paycheck struggle, because it's so ingrained in our culture, and like debt is normal and all of these things. But like, there's a better way. It's managing money is never easy, but there's a way where you aren't struggling from paycheck to paycheck. There's a way to feel like you're in control of your shopping habits, and you're buying, and your money is your money, and you work too hard to go to the end of the month and be like, gosh, where did it all go? And to feel like you can't save for anything. Like, there's just a better way. And so I want to create a hope, because there's a crisis in our country. And the repercussions we're seeing it now in the baby boomer generation and those who are retiring and trying to survive. Not all of them, but a lot of them are trying to survive on Social Security. And it's hard. Ask any of them. It's barely enough. And so we need to be paying attention to their stories, and get our butts out of debt and start saving. And because we need to set a better example for the generation after us.
Yeah, there is so many great things that you've shared. I mean, so many good things. And I want to stand on a pinnacle and cheer and applaud for what you're saying and how you're sharing that, because my husband and I have been on that same journey too. And I don't know, the emotional gamut I think you go through and you experience when you are just living on debt, and you kind of live in denial, and then you go through the emotion of the shock and awe of where you're really at when you realize what you've been doing financially, to then the emotion of trying to fight back and push back and win that war, to the emotion of feeling the freedom that you get from winning that, and the financial choices, the healthy choices that you start making through that. It is I think it's part of the debt-free journey I personally didn't expect to experience. I've always associated money as just like a tool to help me do the things I do. I've never had like an emotional attachment to it per se. And that really caught me off guard when we started going on our journey, and just how much it does impact my heart and my emotions and all of that. It's a whole experience. It's not just an external thing, it really does impact all aspects of us. So what I would love for you to do is step back a second. And I know you said your husband and you had talked about this kind of concept and what you wanted to do as a couple early on when you were dating, which right there, can we just stop and say, amazing. How many more couples should have done that when they were dating? Just talked about life in general. But how did you guys work through what I know is a sometimes not easy process as far as setting up a budget and deciding how you're going to handle money, and when those different things are thrown at you that you were unexpected, and conversations have to be held about money. How do you guys navigate those without it becoming a fist fight brawl where someone either is kicking and screaming, or the opposite I see with a lot of women is that we just walk away and we just let them all take care of it, and then we have no buy-in. So it's like one extreme or the other. So how do you stay in the game but let it not tear up your relationship?
Yeah. I I don't know what it's like to have to rebuild when you've been in a pattern of 10, 20 years of one person handling it all and the other person just going along for the ride. That would have been my tendency for
Mhm.
sure. Especially because I married someone who had made such great financial choices. He was investing. The only debt he had was the house that he was paying on. And so I, it would have been really easy for me to just be like, well, you handle it. You just let me know how we're going to do it. But from the beginning, it was, we're going to do this together. Maybe because I was also working. And so we kind of did some things like, um, all my income went towards our debt. And then whatever was left from his chunk at the end of the month, we would throw that as debt as well. Um, we talked, we talked at least monthly, if not twice a month, through our budget. And it took a few years really for me to figure out, like to me a budget was like guidelines, like,
Mhm.
okay, we're going to spend this much on food. Well, I was like, well, if I end up spending a little bit more, it's because I needed to or whatever, because I wasn't being fluffy about it. It's food. But to him, like looking at the budget and his personality, it was like, we have shooken on this and traded blood, and like, this is the number we will stick by. And so there were a number of fights along the way that was like, why didn't you just come and like tell me you needed more in this area or whatever? And I was just always like, after the fact,
Mhm.
I spent $50 for whatever. And so it took time to figure out each other's processes and how we manage it. And he had like a very specific way of running his bank account. And to this day, I don't know anybody else who does it that way. Uh, and and then I didn't look at my bank account, which obviously wasn't serving me well. So there were a lot of adjustments, but I was always on board with getting out of debt. We both felt this like fiery, like we got to do this. And so that I think really helped us to continue even as fights would happen. Oh my gosh, our budget meetings used to be like an hour and a half. And now, 10 years into marriage, they're 20 minutes. We're boom, 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 boom. But it has taken us time to, because we were, knew what our vision was. It has taken us, we've been patient to give that time and to recognize, this is just part of the journey and we're learning. And when there have been mistakes made or whatever, you just like anything, you work through them and you kind of figure out what was that person thinking, and I'm big about like how you're talking to me and stuff. And I hate conflict. If you know the Enneagram, I'm a 9. So it's like money and conversation about it is like the worst thing in my whole world. But I had to stay engaged with it. And then about 3 years into our marriage, my dad passed away suddenly.
Mhm.
And my husband and I couldn't help, but he helped her with some of the finances.
Mhm.
And my dad had a system that my mom had no idea what he was doing. Even though she wanted to be part of the conversation, my dad was very old fashioned in that way, I guess, and felt like he had to do it all and he had to be in charge and blah, blah, blah. And that really made me lean even more into it and realize, like, I don't want to be lost, and it even got me to the point where down the road, once we were ready to start investing more, I fought it a little bit, but um, you know, my husband taught me a few tricks. He taught me some things to look for. He's like, okay, now take this money and pick like 4 that you think would be great for that. And he taught me some filters, and I kind of hated it in the middle of it, but after I did it, and he was like, those are some great choices. Those are really good. Those are strong. And I felt so empowered.
Mm.
And here's the thing, like 3 out of 4 women at some point in their lifetime will be fully responsible for their finances. If you haven't already been, you will be at some point. And I think there's such an opportunity lost in marriage if you're not talking about your finances and if you're not working through them together, because it really can be a conversation of not just contempt and strife, but of, look what we're doing together, look what we're building here. And there's so many things in marriage that you can feel like there's opposing, whether you're raising kids together or careers or whatever. And so it's a lost opportunity to feel like you're on the same team as that person when you're working together. And I think we see that benefit over and over again. And 5 years, when emergencies come up, we have a roof that needs to be repaired. And this morning, my husband had to go and get tires replaced because one of them blew last night. We are not sitting here biting our nails, stressing over where that money is going to come from, because we started that work paying off the debt and then saving up some emergency money. That's not, it's like wherever the conflict is going to come from, it's not going to be from our financial situation, unless it's like a really big purchase that we're not quite sure when to do it. But emergencies aren't a stressor in our marriage. And that, like, every time those happen, I'm like, that's just crazy to me. Like, I have to remind myself what a blessing that is, and how, like, I want other people to have that. I want other people to know that. And it's not because we're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's just because we've done the work and we've learned how to use our money to still have fun with it. But we're the ones who decide where the money goes. And that's also super empowering as well.
So I think that your lesson after watching your mom struggle or have to come through that experience and figure out how to kind of run things financially for herself, I think that lesson is so critical for everyone. I mean, you're right that there will be women that will need to control the finances and not know how to do that. And that is scary. I remember when my husband came to me and said, hey, I want to do this debt-free thing. I was kind of on board with it simply because I didn't have any debt when we got married. Most of the debt that we had incurred was either as a couple or he had brought into the relationship. And I'm like you. I like don't really want to be bothered with it. I'm just like, I'm not a spender by nature. I'm not really like going out and hitting the mall or, on Amazon I was like, whatever, if you want to do it, it's cool with me. And I didn't really feel like we had a bad financial situation. I was kind of in denial, and we had budget meetings. We met regularly and discussed our finances. We did it weekly because that was my husband's pay schedule, was every week. So we would sit down, on Saturday and do that. But what I figured out after we kind of started down the path was that we were budgeting out of desperation, not out of discipline. We weren't really trying to budget in order to control our money and have a combined vision and make progress on something. We were doing it because every dollar we needed to pay something. And while I wanted to pat ourselves on the back and go, most couples aren't doing this, while that was true, it really wasn't getting us anywhere because we really weren't being smart on how to pay off our debt. And we were trying to divide and conquer all debt instead of having a real clear-cut plan to follow. And then I realized that my agreement to do it was just out of compliance. I really wasn't committed to the process, and it would take me a little bit to learn the importance of it. And I had to figure out why it had to be important to me. And I'll tell you, I had a very similar experience working at a law firm that settled estates. And so when someone passes away, there's an attorney's process that settles their estate. That was such an eye-opening experience because I sat in the conference room and I watched families come in whose family members had passed away that didn't have any money, and they couldn't figure out how they were going to pay for basic things, or had family members that didn't know anything that was happening in their parents' finances or their spouse's finances. And it was just already an emotional time to be grieving the loss of someone that you love and then have all of this extra weight and pressure. And I remember sitting in the conference room one day, and a lady's husband had passed away, and she was older, and he had clearly, ran the finances and done all the investment, and they had done very good for themselves. This wasn't a lack situation. But I remember sitting at the table with her, and her financial advisor was sitting across the conference room table, and she needed to write a check to pay for the attorney's fees. And I remember her looking across the table and asking her financial advisor if she could write the check. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't want to be that blind to my finances. Like, I want to know, like, I have the money. I want to know how it's being used. I want to know where it is and the investment that it's in and how that works. And so I remember coming home and telling my husband, I'm like, okay, like, I'm not going to be a brainiac nerd about it like you are, because he like thrives on those numbers. But I want to know like how you're making these decisions and how can I be, more educated on the topic, because you're exactly right. None of us know what's going to happen, and we'll get stuck with that. And that moment, I think, is what changed my whole perspective on money. It totally did. And so so I know you've written a book about this very subject, and it's really about the heart and the why of why we need to kind of get our finances in check. So tell us a little bit about the book and why you wrote it, and what we can expect to read it. Because immediately on the surface, I'm going to tell you, most people are going to think, oh man, this is going to be a bunch of charts and figures and telling me I can't go to Starbucks and I can't buy my kids Christmas presents. So debunk all of that and tell us really what we can expect to get out of it.
Yeah, awesome. So it was kind of this thing that kind of evolved over the years, and it's amazing how God works and when he thinks is the right time for things. And I, at the beginning of this year, decided to start a blog again. And I was like, I'm really going to do this. I feel like I just keep coming back to like money and personal finances and helping people and creating community and conversation. And a couple months in, I had a conversation with my mom, and I don't even remember why it came out of the conversation, except that I hung up the phone and I was like, I'm going to write the book, and it's going to be about money, and I'm going to publish it myself. And I sat down and started writing it, and I began to think more and more about, there's so many good how-to books out there. Sorry about that. There's so many resources. And that's good, because not everybody sees how things should be done the same way. But what I think what is missing for a lot of people, because a lot of us do know what to do with our money. A lot of us are financially literate. We just are stuck in this cycle of what it could be different things. It might be something pretty serious, like a gambling habit, or buying lottery tickets, or maybe it's impulse shopping and having those therapy trips at Target, and that you didn't plan to spend $150 or whatever, or that those, maybe it's not budgeting. You intend to, decide where your money's going to go every month, but you just, you can't make it work. You can't make it stick. And that really got me to thinking about why, and kind of taking a step back and looking at, okay, there's a lot of hows out there, but let's look at the why. Let's look at, and so the book is broken up into, we talk about debt, we talk about our culture's attitudes around debt, we talk about generosity, we talk about saving, we talk about thinking about the future you. That, and I say in the book, it is like a magic point. Like if at any point in your day, if you could stop and think about that person, and not just like, we're used to thinking about the future and like, oh yeah, the future down the road, but if you actually thought about the future as like a person, and that person being you, well, then that makes it even like, there's suddenly this like affection and this caring for that. It's a person there in the future. And if you thought about, what does that person need? What does Heather need a year from now? And what could I do now that would help her? And there's a delicate balance between enjoying yourself now, but I think sometimes we lean too much that way, and we just kind of throw like, well, forget whatever, and then we're left 5 years down the road standing there with all of our choices, and we're like, well, gosh, gee, thanks, past me. Like, he could have really helped me out in a few different ways. So the book is, as I started to go through it, I wanted to like kind of make it I knew I wanted reflection questions in there, because I really think that helps us kind of break down our attitudes and our thoughts. And that takes time. Like, this isn't for, the reader gets as much out of this book as they put into it. So my story is woven throughout the book. There's statistics and conversation, and it's very conversational, but I ended up breaking it up into 7 weeks, and there's 3 days where there's a pretty short reading, maybe a few hundred words, and then some reflection questions, and there's 3 days of that, and then there's what I call action days, and you get to go to a list of what I call mini money habits. And some of them are bigger, but some of them are small. And each week you get to go to that list and pick something that you need to do. You know what you should be doing, again, but and the book is talking about like there's really inspiring quotes in there about nothing changes if nothing changes type things. Maybe sometimes things when we hear, but again, this is about your relationship with money. And we start at the beginning talking about our childhood, and what were the conversations, words, and emotions that we were feeling and hearing from adults in our life as we were growing up. And those, just thinking about that, impacts us way more than maybe we realize. Maybe we've never even stopped to think about like that. We just feel like we came up with our own money ideas as adults, and that's not really true. Maybe we're repeating habits or unhealthy habits, or maybe we've gone way to the other side and we've said, well, because my family, didn't have any money, I'm going to make lots of money. That's still from a negative motivation. Instead of, so thinking about those motivations and those habits is what the book is about. And so those action days, you get out of it as much as you put into it. And so you take the mini money habits is a list of like, maybe it's checking your bank account daily for the next week. Look at it every day, make sure, because that, like, depending on where you are, like that's a hard habit to build. One is to start, if you don't have a will, do some research and start to put together a plan for actually getting your will done. And then some of them are like, so a lot of people do online shopping now. So one of my favorite online shopping tools is an extension called Honey. And so
Yes, love
anytime
Honey.
I'm shopping, love it. It's
Yes.
so brilliant. I forget it's on there until I'm shopping and I'm checking out, and Honey pops up and it's like, hey, let's look for some coupon codes. And I'm like, yes, let's. And I don't have to do the work. I just click yes, and it looks. And so it helps me feel like I'm doing a little bit. And honestly, I'm surprised at the coupon codes it finds. Or if I'm on Amazon, it'll say this is the best deal over the last 30 days or whatever. There's all different ways that you can use it. And so stuff like that, I try to think across multiple like habits and different parts of how we use money, so that wherever the reader is, they would find some things that they could integrate throughout their 7 weeks. And then they just move in to the next week and go through it. And so the idea is that throughout the book, your emotions, some of your thoughts, some of those things you've unpacked, you're starting to unpack and then rebuild this healthy relationship with money. Because like you said, it is a relationship. A lot of us don't see it that way. We see it as a tool, which it is. But when you think about how you feel when you go to look at your bank account, tells you that it is a relationship. And are you, we're either using it well or we're abusing it. And so that's the idea of the book. And my heart is for people to find hope. It's also small. It's not like a really big, thick book. I feel like sometimes that big, thick money books can feel overwhelming. And so I pictured my reader being someone who's like, I feel like I've tried everything, or I have no idea where to start. I haven't tried anything, but I feel so hopeless and so lost, and I don't know where to start. And so it can hit at different places for different people. And I hope that they feel, as they work through the book, they feel encouraged and inspired. They feel like they may see their self in some part of my story, because I feel like I've done pretty much any bad money decision you can make. Not to mention the payday loan that I did. Like, I get it. So many credit cards, so much impulse shopping, and it doesn't all like turn around in 7 weeks, but it's a good starting point. And one of the other many money habits is get yourself in a personal finance class if you've never taken one. Oh, if I could go back in time, I would put myself in one of those, especially right out of college, because I thought I knew what I was doing, and I kind of did, but like I did it. And that's the great thing about personal finance classes. It gets you around other people that are trying to do something good with their money. They might not have the same stage of life as you, but you're suddenly sharing, and you have this conversation that you're sharing with other people. And that can be really like, it can really kind of spur you on. And it's just so easy. It's so easy to hide our financial lives, because I think for many years has been a taboo topic, which, I get it. You don't need to discuss money at every party and function, but I guess we do at times. But that's just kind of, people know Blake and I love talking about those things. And we're always so honored when people come to us and are like, hey, we need to make some choices about life insurance, or, this or that, or my wife and I are having a hard time talking about money, and like, how do you even talk about it? And I mean, we literally get like super excited. This like thing gets kind of like, we love doing it together. And that's really been fun because we're both such different people. So we come at it from different perspectives. But yeah, so I talk about so much of my story. I feel very humbled that this part of my life that was such a hot mess has evolved over the years, has gotten healing, and is now this platform that I want to shout at people and cheer them on and say, look, I get it. I've been there, and you can do this. You can do this. Even though you see all the commercials that say, go buy the couch the next holiday weekend, let's slow down a little bit and think about why we shouldn't be listening to what culture is telling us. So
I love that the girl who didn't want to talk about money wrote a book about money. I love it. I
that's a
love
good
it.
way to
I
put it.
I feel
Right?
like always an imposter whenever I like want to have a conversation as an authority on that topic.
Mhm.
Not that I know everything, but if I want to share my story, because
Yes.
I'm the same way. I'm always like, yeah, I don't really care anything about this topic, but I'm passionate about it now a lot for the same reasons that you are. And I love that the book comes at it from a heart's perspective on money. And maybe, just maybe, it's the thing that someone needs before they get slammed with budget apps and investment tools and, all of that's hard stuff. And I feel like you have to be mentally geared up to attack those things. And
Yeah.
like this might be something that just sort of lets someone have a little bit of hope before, they jump into that, or feeling like they need that as something to sort of build up their money stamina, if you will, before they dive into something like that. So I love that. I think it fills such a big need in the world. And you're right, we have such a twisted view of money and what our culture tells us we should have and not have, and how we should get it or not get it. And you're such a perfect person to share the story because of the mistakes that you feel like you've made. And I love it because that's the whole guts behind everything that we do here on my side of the podcast, is that, everything we share is this whole mantra of living revised. How can you make a change
Yeah.
today to be better for tomorrow, or to change what happened yesterday? And so those of us who have the scariest, darkest places, when we pull that out into the light, I feel like it becomes a platform we then get to stand on, and it becomes the message for the masses. So I love it and I applaud it. And I know, Heather, it's going to change so many lives. So I'm excited to see what happens beyond this. And the fact that sometimes you can read a book by somebody that's, ginormous, or listen to a video or watches something, from somebody who's way, way out there that you'll never get a chance to see, and you can't ask them questions. The YouTube video does not talk back to you, or the book doesn't talk back to you. So it's amazing that you've coupled your message in your book with your Facebook community, so that the conversation can keep going and people can ask real questions and bring real scenario, to it, and say, okay, apply this to where I'm at right now. I'll just
Yeah.
tell you, my husband and I did the Dave Ramsey thing, and still doing the Dave Ramsey thing, straightforward. He's the type that's like, if he says we go on one, we go on one. We don't go on two, we go on one. And every now and then I kind of want to shake him and go, but he doesn't live in our house, like he doesn't know our scenario. And we had the same
Yeah.
thing. We thought we could do it in a certain time frame, but we got hit with, job situations. My father-in-law got cancer and passed away. My husband took FMLA to take care of him. We had to got kicked out of the house we were renting because they wanted to sell it, and we had to get out, and that threw a wrench into things that we weren't planning. I mean, life happens. Things happen that you just can't plan for. And so I love the concept of the book. I think it'll give people such a great starting point, but also a go back to point, when life throws you those little hiccups of kind of, where do I pick up and keep moving forward in all of this. So for all of you who want to check out the book, tell us the name, where we can find it, and all the details on that.
Yeah. So the book is called Unlock Your Why: 7 Keys to a Thriving Relationship with Money. And it is, the ebook is on pre-sale on Amazon right now. And it will be live October 1st, along with the paperback, and then hopefully turned into an audiobook earlier next year. So as many hands as possible, because I know there's so many people who need it. And yeah, I'm honored to be joining the conversation. And it's what I bring to it is my own perspective and my own story and my own journey. And I love hearing other people's stories and journeys, because we learn so much when we're vulnerable. And I think that helps other people open up and say, yeah, me too. Or, this was my experience. And it's just so valuable in that way. And yeah, so I have high hopes and dreams for just help people,
Yeah.
because those feelings of hopelessness and feeling like you're drowning and you're not breathing don't have to happen. It doesn't have to always be that way. It doesn't have to be just barely surviving. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, the link for the book, as well as to all the places you can connect with Heather, will be in the show notes of the podcast and where you're watching this video. So make sure you link up to that and get the book and follow her for more conversation on that. I can't wait. It's going to be great. And I can't wait to see all that comes out of it. So before we go, have a couple of little rapid fire questions to give you on the hot seat. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
So since we're talking about the topic of money, tell us and the listeners, what is the best advice that you could give someone on the topic of money and budgeting?
Keep trying.
Mm.
Yes, whatever. There's so many different ways to do investing, to do, maybe it's just budgeting. You're wanting to start with budgeting. And I have conversations with a lot of people that are like, yeah, I tried budgeting, but it didn't work. I'm like, well, how did you try it? Maybe that method doesn't work for you. Paper. I know people who have done paper and then they tried something fancy online and they're like, nope, I like paper.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to keep trying. And I would say stick with one system for a few months, okay? Because every week and every month looks different. So try that system for a few months. If it's not working, then try a new system. You will find something that works for you. We've gone back and forth, but we still love our Excel budget sheet. It just worked for us. And so, so keep trying, because there are lots of different ways to doing things. And, the person that you love following, if you don't love their system or just doesn't work with your lifestyle, find one that does work. Don't give up.
Good stuff. Keep trying. Absolutely. So these last couple ones don't have to necessarily be about money. They're just kind of fun, get to know you. So here we go. The skeletons are coming out of the closet. All right. So what is the app you use the most on your smartphone?
Instagram.
Totally. I'm becoming more and more in love with Instagram for sure.
I'm like, why was I on this? I think I've been pretty new actually in the last year. So, my sister was like, you've got to try Instagram. And I was like, there's so many things. But once I tried it, I love engaging with people on there.
Yeah, me too. I'm becoming a bigger fan every day.
Yes.
So tell us your favorite jam song that you can crank up and get the blood flowing when you need it.
Most TobyMac songs.
Totally.
Yes.
Hands down, pretty much all of them.
Yeah. We've seen a few of his concerts, and my kids now know his songs, and we love those songs. We turn up the music really loud.
So, side note on the TobyMac thing. So he used to be in a group way back in the 90s called DC Talk. And the guy who now is the lead singer for Newsboys was in that group. He wasn't the lead singer for the Newsboys at the time. And it was cheesy Christian rap. But it was so cutting edge at the time. I remember going to those concerts and being like, this is the coolest music ever. And so he's 45 and he's still up there killing it like a b-boy, again.
Yeah, I know. I think TobyMac is early 50s maybe.
Yeah, it could. Yeah.
I mean, we saw concerts of his in March, and there's so much movement and dancing in his concerts that he's also doing. I was just thinking, I was watching him, I'm like, he's got to be exhausted.
Yeah, he's gonna
he does marathons and stuff, but I'm like, man, that's a lot.
So, yeah, it is. Yeah. He's impressive. Okay. And book that has really influenced you or changed your thought pattern, been a game changer for you.
Gosh, well, I love self-help books. One that has impacted me a lot in the last year is Miracle Mornings. The Miracle Morning. And the author's name just left me, but his own story is super inspirational, and you have to look him up. It's such a good book, and really has taught me not to hit the snooze on my phone. So if you read it, you'll know what that's about, but it's really all about how just a little bit of time in the morning and owning it really sets the tone for your day.
Yes.
So if you're not a morning person, our mornings are so important to us.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Heather. Everyone go check out the book. We'll share all the links in the video and in the podcast. And we really appreciate your time today, and best of luck in sharing your message and changing people's lives through what you have to share.
Thank you guys so much. I'm honored. Thank you.